We'll make things up as we go. Hey, I guess it didn't take as long to go live as I expected. I ended up with the end of my sentence tailing on there. Welcome, Internet, to another Thursday, another edition of the Mattriarchy. I am Matt Rhys, your host, coming to you from Scottsbluff, Nebraska. Today, I have a panel of not experts. Actually, you probably are experts at something. I just don't know what. So...
Maybe something. Besides sitting on my butt, I'm not really sure.
Yeah. Well, Twitless, who's returned to us for a second helping of the show, because he had some interesting ideas and thoughts that I wanted to talk about. And we have some old metalhead who is here to talk about his comic. And this is your third attempt to crowdfund Thrashers. Yes. And you're doing. I haven't looked today, but how are you doing with that?
We met our funding goal, so it's happening.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah. Third time's a charm, they say, right?
Yeah. I mean, I know the first time you launched, it was in a whole flurry of other people's campaigns. That was there was a lot of competition for the heat, but a lot of people were just like, if I wasn't backing X, I'd love to give you money.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and the first time around, it was going to be a 64-page graphic novel. And I just figured, hey, nobody wants to back somebody they don't know who they are. $50, the book plus shipping and stuff for something they're not really sure about. So I learned my lesson. I reduced it to it's going to be an issue run, and launched it on Kickstarter. Second time, I got about 60% funded that time, and then retooled it. Now, I mean, it's been 8 months since the last launch, and then retooled it, did some things. I had to work some of the story out because I lost my first artist, Jose, and got all that done and put it up, and within a week it was funded. So
wow, that's awesome. That's awesome.
When my first two campaigns were 60 days and it didn't get funded. So
yeah.
I was feeling good, really good going into it, just because of, just things seemed to be falling together, and got a good deal on printing. Found a backup artist, and work was progressing, and I just felt really good right before we launched it, and here we are. It's awesome.
I have to disappear.
Super excited, man. Super excited.
My computer just told me it's almost out of battery. So I'll be right back. You can keep talking about whatever. I just got to zip around for just a second.
All right. I guess it's our show now, right?
Woohoo. Can you, I don't know if you can share screen when Rhys is away, but I was going to say that you should totally share your screen and share your Kickstarter page so that people who watch the show can find it.
I'm not sure if I can do that unless it gives me access to do that, but let me try.
Yeah.
So man, you're fast.
There's a button at the bottom, share
screen share.
Yeah. And then
I have to on this side. I do have to go ahead and actually click the final thing.
Yeah. But you can basically set it up, and then Rhys can add it.
Yeah. Let me get to before he does that. Let me get to the pages, so we're not looking at me sifting through a whole bunch of stuff here.
That's probably good. But yeah. So while you're doing that, give us a little rundown of the story of Thrashers, what it is. I mean, I've heard it before, but let's hear it again.
All right. I always love talking about it. Thrashers is a retro 1980s comic book. It's basically, what if a whole bunch of headbangers were going to a concert and aliens decided to invade? And the story is going to be the six friends, how they deal with the alien invasion. There's going to be a military aspect to it, since they're invading the whole planet. And 6 Army Rangers are going to be introduced in issue 2. And it's basically these two meeting up to join forces to see how they can survive this invasion. And the first 4 issues are basically going to be the first 6 hours of the invasion, and then how they're both affected by it and how they come together to deal with it. and it's each issue is going to be around 23 pages. And issue 1 is done. Issue 2 is about 90% done. I actually got 7 pages of art for issue 3 done right now. So things are cruising along really, really good. It's just like I said, a lot of things have fallen into place in the last month that have just, when I hit the button to launch it, I was pretty confident that things were going to go good. So, and it's going to be, it's going to, basically how our early 20s kids going to handle their whole world coming crashing down around them, and then they bump into some military guys that have actually, been around the block a few times, and how they deal with each other, the coexistence of two different social groups. And, they have bigger things to worry about than their differences. And the rest of the series is going to be about after that is how they survive together. So.
Yeah, I think that's first time I had you on the show about a year ago, I think it was, when during your first campaign, and you were talking about the idea that, everybody's got different strengths, everybody's got different weaknesses, and everybody hates each other. So how does that happen? How do we get beyond our petty differences to survive? And I'm like, I think you're tapping into the zeitgeist.
Exactly, because you got the 6 friends. I mean, there's 6 friends, but there's little quirks about everybody. You got good friends, but there's little quirks about them that it's like, man, we can't take him out anywhere because he's always going to get us in trouble. And the military guys, you've got the sergeant and the guys that are underneath, that little dynamic and how it works. And then you basically, to start with 12 people together and, okay, you need to, how are we going to do this? And then, things go a little bit haywire and, chaos erupts and, you'll find out how that all ends at the end of issue 4. So,
well, and the fascinating thing too is it's even, if I thought it was appropriate in 2019, 2020 has turned up the need for community even more. And I'm just like, I didn't think things could get crazier than last year. I was wrong.
Yeah, it started off okay and then just fell off the deep end. And
oh man, did it ever!
We're still climbing out of it. I think we'll be climbing out of it the rest of the year.
I was just gonna say you need to put a headphone warning on the video for the Kickstarter, because that's some loud music when you first get started. Warning: extreme metal ahead.
Yeah, it's not for the faint at heart. That's what we should. You can thank Doug Garrett for that stuff. Doug.
Oh yeah, cool.
Well, he wrote two songs for it, and then there's an instrumental that he hasn't put any lyrics to, and I think he's going to leave it that way. And nice. Every level of the campaign is going to have you're going to get those 3 songs in a download. So
it's not for the faint of hearing either.
Yeah.
Well,
Amen.
Doug takes his rock and roll seriously.
Yes, he does, and so do I. He first sent it to me, and I'm like, yeah. He's like, I think it's can't turn out a little bit more punk than metal. I'm like, there ain't no problem with that for me.
Yeah, nice.
He killed it. So
I will have to. I have to confess, I've not checked it out yet. I've been that kind of busy, so we'll have to. I'm definitely excited for that. And I didn't even grab the. I'm so far behind today. I didn't even get the link to put in the description, which is a no-no. Gotcha. So I'll have to do that.
I posted it on my Facebook groups and on Instagram and all that stuff. I was going to be here tonight. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's good because I'm really behind.
All right. So I can share this, hit the share screen share.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So. Can you see it?
Not yet.
Make sure I hit all the right buttons. Okay.
So you want to share probably the tab. So you just share screen, and it'll share
your entire screen.
There should be an option to share a browser tab, so you can share an application window, or you can share a tab. So if you have it pulled up on a tab,
there we go.
There you go.
I got it.
Oh, hey, here we go.
Is that it?
Boom.
Dude. Cool, man. Cool.
Yeah. Okay. So we got Chromosome 21 Comics presents Thrashers there. $612 out of 500 gold. 23 backers. Still got a little bit over 2 weeks to go.
Excellent. And so, what's your buy-in on there?
The lowest buy-in is you're going to have is going to be for the digital issue 1 and issue 2 is going to be $5. And you're going to get issue 1 and issue 2 that you're going to get a digital thank you card, and then it's also going to be the multi-track digital EP. So
nice, cool, dude. That's
and then everything.
That's a good amount of value for $5 on a crowdfund.
I just want to get this in people's hands. I'm at the point right now where, and if I was going to get everything I've put into this, I'd have to have a stretch goal, a goal that I'm really not realistically going to make back. So yeah. I'm hoping to get it on the back end with selling some T-shirts and stuff like that, and down the road with other issues that come out with it.
Yeah, I hear that. I had a question about the page count. So you said 23 pages per issue?
The first issue is going to be 21.
21, okay.
And then after that, every additional issue is going to be 23.
How do you, so at the printer, are they like taking a page for an ad or something?
Because normally there's going to be, the story is going to be 21 pages. And then there's going to be a couple of pinups, page pinups in that, to get me to the page that count that I needed for the printer in order for the printer to do it. So
yeah, I remember when I first learned about the whole you have to do it in multiples of 4, and it's just if you're doing at least floppies, trade paperbacks, you can kind of do whatever you want because they glue it. But if you're stapling it for a floppy, you have to do a multiple of 4 for the comic, or you have to have ads and other things that get you to a multiple of 4. So it's kind of an interesting thing to have to think about because it's not just writing the story; you have to write it in a very particular format, or else it doesn't work.
Exactly, and so I put a couple of pieces of art that I commissioned are in there, and then there's also a preview coming soon page for other stuff that I've got in the works. Yeah. And then the back cover is actually going to be the cover for issue 2 without the trade dress. So
gotcha.
Very cool.
And then we're into issue 2, and this is where the military guys come in.
And so you have issues 1 and 2 that are both complete then too, huh?
Issue 1 is complete, and issue 2 has 1 more page to be drawn, probably about, I think, 10 pages to be colored, and then about to the 20 pages to be lettered. So, okay. But my letterist is really quick, and Rodrigo, the colorist, whose colors are just amazing. He gets about 2 pages a week for me to get this in. So
very cool.
All right.
That's awesome.
And then some of the merch, you're going to be inducted into the Thrashers Hall of Fame, the class of 2020. That's part of the thank you card. And certain levels, you're going to get the concert ticket, which is basically, a rendition of what they would have handed in when they got into the concert. And then
right.
That's cool.
Another reward level was going to be J. Paul Sheik's pinups that he did. Just totally blew me away. The first one he did was this breakfast club, which was cool. And he did the one with the metal thing is he called that the blue light or the black light pinup. And then he sent me those 2, and then when he sent me this third one, the Bill Sienkiewicz type art, I just saw that and I was like, I am so glad that you agreed to do this for me.
Yeah,
that is stellar stuff.
That is dynamic. That is great.
And he just, and then you're going to get Tank Ferret, who agreed to do the poster. That's going to be you're going to get 11 by 17 on one of the ultimate perk level, which is called the Thrashers World Invasion perk. And then you're going to get 11 by 17 of that poster by Jose Parras, who was the original artist. And then you're just going to get a couple of this Thrasher sticker, the trade dress sticker for Chromosome 21 Comics. And then this last thing is going to come in a sticker. That's the first art that Jose drew for the campaign. I used for promotional stuff. So, and I think there's 6 reward levels altogether. If you want just issue number 1, you can get just issue number 1, and the floppy copy, the PDF, and then from there it goes up 1 and 2 for $20. You get both physical copies, PDF, and thank you card, and then just cruising up on the line. I add stickers on the next level up, and then stickers and posters. And then I have the guy that did the lettering for one of my other books, Brian Cole, gave me offered to send me 3 PDF comics that he was a part of to add to my campaign levels. So you're going to get some sci-fi stuff mixed in with this when you get to some of the rewards. And then when you're at the ultimate reward, which is the world invasion, you're going to get all three additional digital comic books mixed in with Thrashers stuff. So it's cool stuff. And then for let me go to another. I don't know if I have it. I'm not going to be able to pull that up, but I'm just going to stop sharing for a minute. So yeah, I commissioned Illustrator Monk for a little kind of sexy cheesecake pinup, and a guy by the name of I forgot his name, Paul Keats. He did some pinups, kind of the same type of thing, little cheesecake, little sexy pinups. They're going to be the stretch goals. I was going to say $750, and
I was going to say you can pull those up too on the because that's what I did. If you just play the video and just skip ahead, you can totally see the Illustrator Monk and Paul Keats pinups on the video.
I changed the video, and I forgot I changed the video on the.
So and that's at 750, and you're only what, $80 away from that, right? Is that
about 130 bucks.
Well, then I'm $50 off.
What did I do wrong this time?
Don't trust me with your figures, I guess.
Okay.
We're talking distribution and finances today in comics.
Yeah. Why am I not?
Yeah, I am super stoked that you. So do you have that you got the funded on there? I know that was a huge burden, and I think the project is, even though I haven't backed yet, I still believe the project is really cool. So I think I'm really glad to see that that's moving forward on there. Are you do you have like I know you're doing Kickstarter, so do you have plans to like do like a web store after the campaign?
That's the plan. Where me and my I should say my wife is developing a web page for the book. For our company Chromosome 21 Comics, and then I'm going to attach that to an Etsy store and sell additional copies through that. I've also got hey, thank you.
No problem.
I also got Illustrator Monk. That is just awesome right there. Yeah, that's just really good. I just love it. I've got 5 stores in my local area that are going to be putting it on the shelves once I get both issues.
Nice.
I got some promotional posters. I'm going to drop off to them in the next week. So I just, when I said, you know what, it doesn't hurt to ask, so I just went on Facebook and all they have Facebook Messenger, and I just started basically annoying the crap out of them about my book, and 5 of them have gotten back to me and said, sure, we'll put it on the shelves, just bring it to us. You can drop the copies off today. I'm like, well, if you would have read the whole message, it's crowdfunding right now, it's going to be a little while. So they're like, hey, no problem, whenever it's ready, just bring it down. So when they said that, I was like, well, hey, can I give you some promotional posters? And they're like, sure. I was like, cool. Because because I'd actually walked into a couple places and physically asked, and they're like, well, no, unless you're associated with Diamond, well, we can't put anything up in the windows or anything like that. And I was like, okay, well, obviously I'm not getting anywhere here. So I got a little discouraged, and then I just said, you know what the heck, I'm just going to try again. And it took like 4 or 5 days before they started responding to me, and I was like, oh, well, I'm just going to keep asking. And I've made a couple of YouTube videos, and I think I even put it on one of the updates for the campaign, that if you know any stores that are willing to do indie artist stuff, just contact me and I'll get you some copies, or I'll send them straight to the store and we can get them on the shelves there. I also talked to one of the store owners, and they're willing to put other indie books on it, because they're creating just a whole section for indie creators. So I'm trying to get Doug's book on there, and trying to get the Napalm Brothers book in there, and all that stuff. So that's it's just trying to help the community out as much as I can to get a wider audience for stuff like that, especially since Doug's been good to me and Doug's been good to the community, and that's we're all in this together. We're the small guys, so we got to band together to get this stuff done. Yeah,
actually, I think that's a really key thing. Actually, that kind of ties into the theme I wanted to touch on today, was looking at so us little guys, right? Even if we had the capital to get the volume to get in on Diamond, because that's all it takes to get into Diamond. They're not so picky about stuff that they want to shut indie people down, but you got to be able to provide them with thousands of copies, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so there's a barrier to entry based on that. But even with that, if you have that, unless you have that, there's no way to get in. And so it's one of those things where that becomes a huge problem with trying to get your product out there. I think is one of those things that's trying to think outside of the box when it comes to distribution is something that I'm really interested in. I've talked to a few shops, and we've been featured in a couple of places where we've had fairly mediocre sales.
Yeah.
But I was talking to my shop here in town, and it's mostly a game store with a comic section.
Yeah.
But up at Scotts Bluff, I said if we they just moved to a new location, and they said, well, we're interested in. I said to them, I got to back up. I said to them, I appreciate that you're in the store, but like nobody I think even knows that we're local. Nobody even knows that what it is. We just kind of get lost in the mix with all the other comics. What would you think about having a dedicated display that sits out away from it a little bit, that says, hey, local comics, that we can kind of change stuff up around? And they said, hey, I'd be okay with it. I said, well, we'd even buy the gear if you want. And they said, hey, that sounds like a really good partnership. Let's work that out and everything. And so we're working that out. I think a lot of shops would be interested if they had those kind of indie partners. But for some people, they just aren't interested in bothering with it.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of the flack that this kind of transitions into the other thing, but a lot of the flack that people were throwing at DC when they decided to officially leave Diamond was the idea that they were going to have to work with other distributors than just one.
Exactly.
And I think some shops don't want to deal with indie guys for the same reason. They're just like, it's too much of a pain for us to change the way we do books and figuring, because I think some of these guys are just comics fans. They're not really businessmen. I mean, they don't really know the ins and outs of running a business. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I do either. I don't. I'm really awful at all of that stuff. I'm good at talking and inventing imaginary worlds. Those are the things.
I was going to say that I think in many instances, not all, but I was going to say that in many instances, I think the stores that are associated with nerd culture are the worst at customer service and providing a solid customer service experience to the customer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so easy. It's like writing on a wall, like because like you can just talk to someone who doesn't go to a comic book store, like like your wife, or just people who just aren't into comics, and you just ask them, hey, what do you think of that store? What did you think about it when you went in? And like you just see them just kind of like recoil a little bit, and they're just put off, just the vibes put off by the place.
Well, and the weird thing about that particular aspect is, okay, so a little flashback in time to when I started reading comics, right? I found comics in the gas stations. I found comics at the grocery stores. I found comics at the bookstores, right? And it was me at the bookstore sitting on the floor, flipping through comics, deciding what I wanted to put my allowance money into, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I was 16, so what? Anyway, But with all of that, that was a situation where, when I first time I went into a real comic book store, it was kind of scary because I was kind of a prudish little kid, and there were all of these nearly naked women, and there was Lady Death, and there was all of that kind of stuff. And I was just like,
yeah. It's always Lady Death or Vampirella, and it's
Vampirella,
like they have like they have a 6 foot tall cardboard cutout, and that's like the first thing that the customer sees.
Elvira was it.
Okay.
I mean, I'm old enough that Elvira was still a very prominent part of the comic shop, even though she wasn't really in comics, but still at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I was taught some basic. I mean, I'm not a customer service expert, but I was taught some basics, and it's when a customer comes in, you're supposed to make eye contact with them. You're supposed to greet them. You're supposed to make them feel warm and invited. And how many times have you gone into a store where the person behind the counter just like they're either playing on their phone or they're just reading a comic or whatever, and like barely make eye contact or grunt at you?
Mm-hmm.
And they're definitely invested in the hobby, but they're not invested in making a positive customer service experience, and people are turned off by that.
Well, yeah, because the two stores that I like to go to the most, the owner of the store is usually there. Mm-hmm. And he's the one that's going, and he's coming up to you and talking to you and asking all how you doing? What are you here for? It's the other employees there that aren't invested in it, that kind of just sit back there and play their games and don't make eye contact with you until you actually come up. And then you ask them a question, hey, do you have this book? And they look at you and it's like, well, is it on the rack? I said, well, if it was on the rack, I wouldn't be asking. Can you order this book or and they're like, well, you'd have to wait for the boss to come back in because I'm not really sure how that works.
In our shop, like the counter staff, they're excellent, but they don't know anything about comics.
Yeah.
There's only one of the owners, because there are 3 partners, and one of the owners knows the comic business, and they're like, you're gonna have to talk to Amber.
Yeah.
I only go in, and I don't think she even knows I have a show, and I'm not trying to badmouth her, but I only go in to talk to Amber when I know I have at least a half an hour, because we'll talk business. And then like that takes like 5 or 10 minutes about, making my monthly order or talking about, I'd like to, here, I'm bringing some new books out. Can I get them some shelf space, whatever it is. But then the next 25 minutes are just comic talk where she just like, I haven't talked to anybody about comics in 2 weeks. And she just
yeah.
So that's one of the things where, I mean, I really like that about my shop. And they didn't used to have comics. It was just Amber's hobby. And then she's just like, I need to sell some stuff. So she decided to bring them because they had comics back in the day, but they weren't selling enough to go through, and decided to change things up. And they actually go through DCBS anyway. And so that when DC announced that was one of the companies they went with was DCBS and with Midtown. So she was already going through DCBS, so it wasn't even a big changeover for her at all.
Yeah.
And because DCBS was, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but they actually subcontract with Diamond. And if you don't buy enough books for a Diamond account, you can get a DCBS account as a small shop and get still buy them at retail price. Yeah. So that's where they got. So like for a while, DCBS didn't carry any indies, and then they started to. So I had a shop I bought my indies in Cheyenne, and then I bought my DC stuff here in Scottsbluff, and then I started being able to get indies here, and so like I transitioned over, and it was a whole deal. So
Yeah. The thing that I have the one store that I like to go to, and I get everything else, and then I have to go to a different store just to pick up anything that's indie or alterna. Because the other, I even with one of the first stores I ever went to when I was here in Texas, and I asked about alterna comics, the guy just looked at me like, who? And he's like, who's that? And I'm like, well, they make comic books the old school way, newsprint, and and he's like, I've never heard of him. And I'm like, dude, I'm not even in the business of selling these books, but I'm in the business of reading them. And if you don't know what's out there, how are you providing a variety for your customers to come in and to look? I mean, I understand that the profit margin is pretty thin on that, but you're going to have your DC and your Marvel, but some people aren't going to like that. They're looking for something a little bit more fantasy or a little bit more horror oriented. You got to have some variety out there, or they're just going to walk in, look around, and walk out, and they're never going to come back.
Yeah.
And it's sad. It was just sad to me that he wasn't the owner. He was just one of the they're like a chain. I think they have 4 stores in the area. And the fact that he had never even heard of Alterna Comics or Antarctic Press was just kind of a sad state of tells you where the comic industry is right now.
And like it's not weird to me that people haven't heard of Alterna. I like the products, but they're pretty new to the monthly comic game. They've been in business for like 10 or 12 years, but in terms of monthly comics, that's only been like 4 years. So that's still pretty new. And I think they've got pretty good circulation for as young as they are in that part of the business. But when it comes to Antarctic, they've been around for like almost 30 years. I mean, they've got Battle Angel, Ariella. They've got Gravediggers. They've been doing, of course, Rags was a huge success for them on that too. But they've been in business for a long time. And to somebody like, oh, I've never heard of Antarctic Press, I'm like, like I had never even read Warrior Nun Ariella, right? But I knew about it. I mean, you couldn't not know about it if you were reading comics in the 90s. It was huge for being a small company out of Texas. And I mean, it was one of those things like I'm not going to sit here and like Brian Ball is a huge Antarctic Press fan. He will talk about their 90s run for hours if you let him. But I wouldn't know that much about it, but I knew that they were there. And it wasn't like a really surprising to me at all about that. So that's the I have a really hard time understanding somebody that just didn't even know about them.
Man.
And of course they're making right now they're publishing some of my favorite books. Punchline. It's just one of the best superhero books of the last, as far as a title of the last decade at least. Man, I love it. So but I think it's one of those things where small people have got to figure out some way of building these maybe informal networks to try to get our stuff around more.
Because I mean, because as a lot of people have said, the crowdfunding train isn't going to keep going on forever. You got to find other ways to get our books into people's hands. Whether it's through an online store or whether it's creating a little network that, hey, I'm shipping Doug 10 of my books and he's shipping me his, and we're all interchanging them around and we're putting them on a shelf, and then and however the economics of that all work out, that's something. It's better than nothing, but it's not perfect. But the longer we start doing it, if we have the gumption to keep going and going and going, it's gonna end up benefiting everybody in the long run.
I'm undecided about the crowdfunding long term, and I think that's part because it's such a unpredictable thing and it's so new. It's kind of hard to basically make, I think, predictions about it because we don't know. My gut, I could be totally wrong. My gut is that crowdfunding will in fact be a long term solution for very, very a very select few people who can basically become celebrities on it. Doesn't like Lady Death? Every single time. And so I think he can probably do that till he Lady dies. But bringing the laughs. No, but like him, and then like your Doug TeNaples and Ethan Van Skyvers can probably crowdfund till the day they die too, and it probably work just fine for them. I think for everyone else, it's probably, I would imagine that's where I'm like, I don't know if it's going to be super sustainable.
Well, so I think one of the things you're looking at with those kind of products is that they are based on like an event model, right? Like Doug TeNaple, like he's doing his 5 Bigfoot Bill books and 3 Earthworm Jim books and whatever else he wants to do, but those aren't going to be like ongoing series. He's not going to be like Agatha Christie, where he does like 60 Poirot novels, right?
Yeah,
it's going to be a situation where there's short-term things and you can get attention and everything built up for that, but it's not the kind of serial storytelling that comics traditionally have been. It's related to it, but it's not the same. And I think the same is true. I mean, Polito, his stuff, like his is more serialized because it goes back to the old stuff that they were doing with I can't remember, his Chaos back in the 90s. But it's still not the same, right? It's like they're contained, they're the whole thing with it. And the other thing about these guys is they've got big followings. And the thing about crowdfunding is that it doesn't seem to have the same kind of new market building that a lot of it is. It's people that buy crowdfunding comics are already comics fans, regardless of what platform you get. And I mean, I think that there's a real evidence that people are building their individual customer bases up. Tim Lim, Doug TeNaple, even with the Punchline books, that they're people that are building their their fan bases up, but through crowdfunding. But it's not a situation, I don't think, where these are people that aren't really reading comics. And one of the things that bothers me about the direct market model in terms of comics is that it still doesn't build a new market for comic readers. It's all us old guys that have been reading comics since we were, going to school in short pants. I sound really old now, don't I? They didn't let me wear shorts in school. I'm not that old. I'm in the middle times. They used to, and then they didn't, and they did again. It's a whole thing. Anyway, but yeah, I think that's one of the problems with the direct market is that it doesn't reach new readers. I think that's one of the problems that we have with the Diamond system, and I don't really see that changing with DC making that shift to Midtown and DCBS. I think that we're missing a different step, and this is why I wish that Perch had come, because I know he's been selling comics since before the Diamond monopoly, and I've heard stories about it, but I don't know the facts. I just know the stories.
And you got to look at it too, as most of these comic book stores, they don't sell just comics because they're not going to be able to make a living doing that. So they have to venture out and do other things. So they have a limited amount of space for comics. You take into that, plus how many comics are put out every month. So their budget, they're going to go with the Marvels and the DCs and the stuff they're going to be able to sell, and all that stuff that's indie or some of the smaller stuff isn't going to make it to the shelves. So it's never going to be seen, and it's you're going to get some of the bigger stores, the superstores that are there's the few that are still around. They're going to put everything on the shelves, but some of these smaller outlets that you have, that is just some dude that want to open a comic book shop. The only way you're going to get, he's going to put anything on his shelf that's outside of that is something that he's reading or something that one of his friends or one of his staff brings to his attention, and then he's going to put it on the shelf. They don't have the budget to put every book that's produced every month on the shelves, and that's where it hurts the little guys like us.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's I've actually seen that happen. The shop I used to get in Cheyenne, they had like half of their stuff was indie stuff because the like it was like 3 partners that ran that shop, and 2 of them were big indie comics guys. They loved horror, they loved the gory stuff. And so they had the Alterna, they had Aftershock Comics, they had the whole whole bunch, and but they within a year and a half they had clearanced all of those books out and was almost all Marvel and DC because that's what was moving. They had IDW stuff, and they had like Image and some of the bigger indies, that are big enough to not be indies anymore. But it was the little guys, like that was it. They'd quit carrying like Alterna Monthly, and I got about half of the Alterna stuff I picked up out of their 50-cent bin. Which as from $1.25 to 50 cents is not a big jump, but it's okay. It wasn't as good a bargain, but I'm still glad I did it. And so I think that's one of the things it's a hard. Comic shops are small businesses, and so it's a hard thing. Almost all of them. So it's a hard thing to kind of find the middle ground with, and that's one of the things too that was so bizarre to me, looking at, and this is something that Twitless, both you and Perch had commented on, was Chuck Krasinski's meltdown, basically. And I don't want to be ungrateful. I mean, don't want to be uncourteous to the guy, but he did not seem to deal. I mean, he took DC's move very personally. What was your take on all of that?
My take is starting to become: is there a single actual professional amongst comic book professionals? And I'm not trying to be mean because I know there are. In fact, I just talked to some. Tim Lim was a very professional sounding person, but I've just in the mainstream, there was all that movement away. Oh, these comic book professionals are not acting professional. And I'm sitting there going, is that a new thing, or is that just the way it's always been? Because I would once again highlight the fact that nerd culture, I think, attracts people who are often outcasts from society, and sometimes that means that they never learned proper social skills. And it's just what you end up with. Sorry, it's just people acting like. The drama is so middle school and it's barely into like, I wouldn't even call it high school drama because I remember when I was in high school, somewhere around like 10th or 11th grade, you started to mature just a little bit and like not try to be like nerd and like act like a kid. That was more middle school, and I feel like a chunk of the drama that I'm seeing on Twitter from grown adults. And this is on either side. Like I said, I've seen, people on the left, people on the right do it, people who used to be friends. I'm sitting there going, this is so childish. Like, did you never learn how to just be... So to bring it back to Rosansky, everything he said sounded like, it was a middle school breakup.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that breakup is a big part of it because it was very much like built on this idea that it's all personal relationships, right? Like, my friend at Diamond was hurt because he was dealt with scurrilously by those cads at DC.
Backstab. They were backstab.
Backstab. Yeah, the word backstab.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it was one of those like, no, I mean, like,
how dare you make
Diamond hasn't done right by their customers for years. I've heard that from a bunch of store owners,
like everyone.
With exception of some of the folks at like, in my experience, with the exception of some of the folks at Mile High, right? And I'm not saying that there was any kind of impropriety there, but they had good relationships with Diamond for whatever reason, and maybe it's because as the company as big as Mile High, who had their own subscription service. They were going through millions of dollars in product a month. That's not their profit, but that's their pass through, right? That's their cash flow. Mm-hmm. And so, they probably had a different relationship with just personal relationship with Diamond because of the volume than somebody like Perch, right? Than somebody like Dave, what's his bucket, who used to run that other shop that quit. Like Gabagool is his Facebook handle. I can't remember the guy's last name right now, but He used to run a shop, and he just found it wasn't profitable, and there was too much drama, and he, that's it. I'm done. I was thinking I was done, and I'm definitely done.
Yeah.
Didn't Nerdrotic used to run a show? I think he sold it to his to Brian Hibbs, actually.
I think you may be right. I think you may be right.
A lot of people, what was it? It's always a good sign for your industry when someone says, "How do I get into comic books?" and someone says, "Don't."
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll ruin you, and it's just great.
Well, and I think part of that is comes down to the expectation of some of these former shop owners that weren't in it for business, that were in it because of the love, right? And I think the love is good, but I think you have to have both, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, like, I make comics as a hobby. I've done this, for it's coming up on 2 decades. Yeah, it's at least 15 years. I don't want to do the math right now. But anyway, my point is that I've been at this for a while, and it's definitely a passion project for me. I'm not making any scratch with it. The people that I'm working with are all that I work with routinely are all people that either we want to do this for a living, so we're investing, sweat capital to the point where we can try to make something happen, or people that are just like, I don't care about being successful. I just want to make comics. And I want to do the best I can because I've always loved the medium. And so that's our little group of Ideal Comics. Those are all the people that are involved in that sort of thing. But we're serious about it still. I mean, we're not, I'm not going to have my heart broken because people aren't buying my books, because it's not about the buying, it's about the making. And I'm not going to have my heart broken because the internal politics gets to me, because I don't care about other people think about me.
That's not my. Sorry.
No, it's cool, man.
Now, I think Chuck Dixon said, what did he say? When comic books went into the boutique stores, they died. I heard it. I'm not sure
if he said that, but I have to agree with that. And I think there's two sides of it, right? Is not just the boutique stores themselves, because like comic shops used to be, and this is once again, this is my understanding. I was born in 1978, so like the direct market had already started by the time I was born, and had been around for 10 years by the time I was into comics, right? And so the boutique shops started as back issue stores, right? And like, when comic collecting became a thing, there were people that had back issue stores, and they were selling comics to the hardcore nerds that were like, I wanted this issue of Flash,
right?
Flash of Two Worlds. I love that.
So I think what Chuck was saying was that when they went to the boutique store and got out of everywhere else,
right? And that's what I was leading up to. Is like that was actually not until 2005. Right. That's one thing is crazy about that is like the when, because Diamond didn't have its monopoly until after the whole Heroes World thing. When Marvel, because DC signed it wasn't Diamond had been distributing, and this is what I want to perch on to make sure that I had my facts right. Yeah, but he can't make it, and that's okay. And maybe we'll talk about this again at a later time and make sure my facts are right. But okay. Is that DC Diamond's been doing business for like 25 years. But there wasn't an exclusivity contract at first. They were just one of several big distributors. And through the course of the 90s, with the whole comic bust, part of what that was happening was that they had everybody overextended themselves, thinking this was the new manga market. See what Japan did with it, and America's finally catching up to how awesome comics are. And it was all speculators, and everybody has 16 copies of The Death of Superman, and everyone's selling them on this brand new thing they invented called eBay. That's a little early for eBay, but only by like 3 years. But
it was that in Jim Lee's X-Men #1, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and then a bunch of stuff. The Nightfall, all that kind of stuff. There was these big event books that were hugely overprinted. There was, I can't remember. I was watching somebody's report on it. It may have been Perch actually who's talking about it, or Wes from Thinking Critical, who'd gone back and done the counting, and there were 12 editions of the Death of Superman that were shipped. And each of them were shipped in the millions of copies just on the idea that everybody wants one of each of them. And I had the newsstand copy. That's what I had. And I don't even think The Death of Superman was a bad story. Tim Lim will talk about that was when he like stopped caring about mainstream comics, because obviously they're bringing Superman back and nobody cares and none of it matters and he doesn't care anymore. That was his. He just signed off of mainstream comics because of The Death of Superman. And I'm like, that was a fun story, dude. I don't know what your deal is, but to each his own, right? Because I really think his fighting back from the afterlife and Jonathan Kent, and I love that whole bit.
Have you ever seen whoa, I'm getting feedback. That's weird. Is someone's mic feed me? Sorry, it's just I hate hearing myself talk.
I don't. I will turn my. I'm here. I'm not hearing anything, but I will turn my speaker down. Sometimes it picks up my speaker.
Oh, okay. Max Landis did this bit on Death of Superman. It's kind of a comedy, but it's also a little bit of an analysis of why people didn't stop caring. It had some pretty good points in it, and I think that's probably what maybe what Tim's kind of like picking up. But no, I think we're all kind of on the same page regarding the exclusivity of the direct market kind of killed things. And
and part of that had to do, I think, with price point too. I think that because my personal theory, and I've talked about this on the show before, but I think one part of it was the people pushing back against the Comics Code Authority and trying to make everything for adults. The comics market had moved to a largely adult market. Funny Animals weren't really selling so much anymore. But part of that was in your big markets, right? In your big markets, it was all the specialty shops had entirely taken over. Like I talk about going to the 5 and dime to buy comics, and back in like 96. And if you lived in Houston, that was an unheard of thing. They didn't have like comics of the Piggly Wiggly anymore then in your big urban areas. But I'm in like backwoods Nebraska. You could get comics at the Ben Franklin. Well, it wasn't a Ben Franklin anymore, but you know what I mean. It had formerly been a Ben Franklin. And, but I mean, that was just available out here because what part of the thing is like Diamond. It was, I can't remember. There were 3 big distributors that were really popular in the 90s, but a lot of these guys were selling their overstock or were selling a portion of them to these small news distributors. And so you still got comics in the newsstand in a lot of these places because they were done by the same people that were distributing your magazines and everything else. And the way they would do it is that they would buy, and so you wouldn't always get the complete runs of stuff. So everybody had their subscription services or whatever. The DC and Marvel and whatever else had subscription services. But the way these companies would run these like our local ones, Kent News, and Kent News used to do comics and doesn't anymore. Well, they still do Bongo. Actually, you can still get Simpsons comics at the co-op. But I don't read Simpsons. But anyway, back to my point though, is that the way they would do it is that they would they had several of these sub distributors that were dealing with comic books, and they would put in a bid for a certain poundage of comics. Right? It wasn't even titles; it was a pounds of comics, and then whoever like paid the most bid for that poundage of comics, when they would get printed, they would ship them out, and they would renegotiate these mini contracts every several months, if my understanding is correct. And that's why all of the different shops would get a different selection of stuff. And then ours, the main DC titles were pretty consistent in the mix, but like our Kent News would often ship the same kind of books to the different locations. Like there was a gas station up on 27th Street that almost every month had Justice Society, right? And so like this was back in like 96, 97. It would have been 97, 98 after I left college. So that was the time, like I knew if I wanted to get Justice Society, I was going to the gas station on the corner because that's where it was, right? They didn't always have, and like that was something I think they just were doing Art 8 that Kent News did. That wasn't something that was like an arrangement they had with the gas station. Because I knew a guy who worked at a gas station. I was like, so do you request the specific comics to come in here? Because I know you had been getting this and I'm not seeing it. And he's like, we don't do anything with that. That's all the news agency that does it. So I think that whoever the guy who stocked the comics must have had a scheme or a plan or something. but yeah, that was all. They would just negotiate by the pound or by the ton or whatever it was, and then that's how many they get shipped from these sub distributors. And but we don't have anything like that anymore. I guess DCBS is kind of like that because they buy them from Diamond and then sell them for whatever. But it's definitely not the same kind of a thing where, and that's just really interesting to me how that's a thing. And I think part of the thing is we don't have entry-level comics. They're priced out of impulse height, Mm-hmm. And I don't think, and that's one thing, like, I don't know if you guys have been following the whole Allegiance Arts and Walmart thing.
Yeah, a little.
Before I weigh into that, have you guys seen those books out at your local Walmart?
I don't shop at Walmart, but I have seen the videos of people going and seeing the displays. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. After when they said they were going to be in there, it was probably about 6-7 weeks before my Walmart in my town got that set up.
And they have them in my store too, and they're not in the book section. They're actually in electronics, and they're placed in kind of a weird way. But nobody's touching them. That's the thing. It's crazy. Like I've been keeping an eye on it, and I flipped through one of the books, and I'm not trying to disparage the art within it, because there's some good folks and they've got some talent, but I was really underwhelmed with the paper quality for being a $5 book.
Yeah.
Right. But the thing to me is like, okay, and the paper quality in them is very similar to the you don't know this, Twitless, because you don't shop at Walmart, but DC has been distributing in Walmart for about 2 years these 100-page giants, right?
Yeah, Jim Lee tries to pull them out so you can see them as opposed to the Twizzler bags.
Yeah. Well, and they're actually in our store. We've got a nerd section of stuff right up front. So your Pokemon cards, your collectible toys, the comic books. They've got bagged Marvel stuff and the DC Giants, and they're all in this section in one of the impulse aisles, which I don't think is bad placement. And those move a little bit. They're not hot off the thing, and I think that part of that's where they put them.
Yeah.
I think that the thing that would make most sense because whoever does their distributing there, and I'm not sure how that works out, but they're not taking old months. They're just dropping in new month stuff. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes, depending on what they have, sometimes they'll get kind of backed up. And I think they ought to take the old month stuff and move them over to the toy section and just put a sidekick up there, a magazine sidekick, because I know they have them in the back because I used to work there. And so I know what they have back there. And if they moved them to a second location by the toys, by the action figures, I'll bet they'd move those books faster. But it's $5 for 100 pages. And it's if you're selling $5 for 100 pages of Batman, Superman, Batgirl, the Green Arrow, people's favorites, Swamp Thing. They've got the horror books that are in there too. If you're selling $5 for 100 pages of classic comics, and then you're trying to say, "Oh, we have Red Rooster," for $5 for 24 pages, you're frugal shopper. People don't shop at Walmart because they like Walmart. I'm telling you, man.
Yeah.
So
that is true. That is true.
They're going for bargains, and if they like Walmart, it's because of the bargains, right? That's the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're going to pick between these items, you're either going to get the 100-page manga that's in the book section. You're going to get My Hero Academia. You're going to get One Piece, whatever they have over there. You're going to pick up the 50, the 300-page Scholastic books, that are like $7 for 300 pages. Dog Man or the Amazing Nate or whatever it is, they have. or you're gonna pick up the 100-page DC books where your favorite hero Batman gets to face off against the evil Joker or Two-Face or Clayface or whatever. You're gonna pick all those things that you're familiar with. You're not gonna say, "Huh, I wonder who Bass Reeves is." And Bass Reeves is a story, an American story that we should hear more about. But people, I don't think people are going to pick it up if they're not already vested in the whole allegiance thing. They're not going to be. You're not going to. It's priced above that impulse level. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
That is a puzzle. I think that I don't know what it is that Archie Comics, what deal they have, but they have always been in the impulse magazine part. Even in places like Walmart, you can snag a copy of one of the Archie digests right next to where all the magazines are, and it's like, why isn't there the new issue of Tom King's Batman there?
Yeah.
Why is that not there? And
part of it's the digest size is that they have the digest size going on. And the other thing is that, and this is something that Pete Samedi's talked about, to get in the checkouts, there's an extra fee that goes into that. And so those sort of newsstand distribution that ends up with that kind of placement, you pay to be at in the checkout lanes.
DC could totally afford it. If Archie,
of course they can. Of course they can.
That to me that also display to me, and this is something that I've been hitting on for years, is the fact that Marvel and DC don't care about the health of the industry. Yeah. They only care about the health of the IP fan club. Yeah, that they can strip mine for movies and merchandising.
Well, I think that was the case at DC from the time. And if you guys, I don't have a link for this, but for those of you guys who are watching, there's something in the private chat.
Oh, that was me.
Oh, on the Death of Superman. Okay, that sounds cool.
It's a funny.
I'm actually going to copy that. Oh, not that. Oh, come on. But anyway, if you guys check out Chuck Dixon's channel, his most recent Ask Chuck Dixon, I think it's episode 13 or 14 that just came out earlier this week. He has to talk about two of the great comic editors, Archie Goodwin and Denny O'Neil. And he found excuses to talk about both of them in his thing, and it is an awesome thing. It's great to take time at, and I would highly suggest it. In fact, Chuck Dixon, who is the most prolific comic writer in history, nobody has come close to writing more comics than Chuck Dixon, and that includes Stan Lee. Chuck Dixon has written SpongeBob. He's written Archie. He's written Punisher. He's written Airboy. He's written The Lone Ranger, I think. Green Hornet. Yeah, tons of stuff. Of course, Chuck basically defined the Bat universe in the 90s, doing huge runs on Batman and Detective and Robin and Nightwing and Catwoman, and was the co-writer behind the post-crisis reboot of Barbara Gordon in her Batgirl days. Her as the Oracle was John Ostrander. But Chuck also was the co-creator of Birds of Prey. It was Jordan Gorfinkel's idea, but Chuck Dixon's words. And so, the man's an institution. And so listen to what he has to say. It's great. But additionally, he got a chance to talk about Archie Goodwin, who was a DC writer and editor, and was the editor on Starman, one of my favorite books before his death. And also creator of Manhunter, the Shaw version. And he also did a bunch of editing stuff. And Denny O'Neil, who of course, in a lot of ways rescued Batman in the 70s, and set a course that was just phenomenal in that. And as group editor of the Batman books in the 90s, is just phenomenal. Now, and for the record, Popefire, if you watch this on replay, I know he hated Starfire, and that doesn't matter right now. I know you're not wrong, but it doesn't change the massive impact that Denny had with keeping the fans happy, the universe consistent, and Batman readable for 15 years.
Yeah.
So it's actually almost 20, and it's hugely important what Denny did as an editor there. And yeah, everybody makes mistakes. But yeah, and that's one of the things that I really think it comes to, is that these are guys who cared about the fans and cared about the characters and wanted to do right by everybody. And I think their quality of their product demonstrates that in a way that, when Denny left, when Archie died, when Jeanette Kahn retired, DC just hit that flush button, and just like their continuity, their character development, and I think their distribution model, that and them going exclusive with Diamond, all happened around the same time, right? Even if you look at it was a little bit before that, but the guy who had been head of production, oh my goodness, I'm going to forget his name. Bob. Never mind. There were other people at DC who had this idea that, quality mattered, and your fan base mattered, and your characters mattered, and all these things mattered, and comics matter, even if they're silly, throwaway newsprint stuff. They matter. And I think that we don't live in the world. Something in the 2000s happened where that stopped being the case, and I think there are lots of theories on it, but I think it, and I don't think it was just story. And I know last week, Twitless, you and Tim got real energized about it being the British invasion. And you're not necessarily wrong, but it wasn't just the story aspect. I think it was the whole business of it.
We both mostly blamed Warren Ellis, which is funny.
There was a lot of Warren Ellis blame.
Right after we bashed on him, it was like magic. He got canceled the week after. Have you heard any of that?
I
haven't looked into it at all.
He got Me Too'd.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There's an artist or writer, Cameron something.
Stewart.
He got Me Too'd big time, and then Warren Ellis got lumped in with that. And it was basically, Warren Ellis is going to cons and he's always trying to pick up chicks and he's being a creepy old perv or something. And he basically got folded into it. The other guy was being accused of grooming, serious stuff. I think Warren Ellis was being accused of being just a perv, but it was just interesting because we had just talked about, Warren Ellis ruined everything. And then people literally started to be trying to ruin him. It was
I can't imagine it surprising that Warren Ellis is a perv. I mean, first of all, let's be completely honest, right? Most men are at least a little bit fighting the urge to be pervy. Even if we want to be better than that, want to be bigger than that, sometimes we're not. We're broken, we're corrupt, the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I agree with him being canceled over going to a con and wanting to have sex. I mean, I'm not saying I approve of that type of behavior myself, but I mean, I'm so he deserves to be canceled because he has a sex drive. Yeah. You went to a con and you tried to get laid. I wouldn't necessarily cancel someone over that. Now, again, if there was any actual criminal behavior, obviously, but right now he's just being accused of stuff, and accusations aren't proved.
Yeah. And I think cancel culture doesn't need an idea. They just a reason or anything like that. If they want to come after you, they're going to come after you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean,
regardless of whether it's true or not, by the time the truth comes out, it's too late. You're freaking married.
I mean, and it like my wife said yesterday, it's not enough for people to try to cancel you because you have wrongthink, but your friends who may or may not agree with you can get canceled because you have wrongthink.
Yeah,
and that's a scary world to live in.
Yeah, exactly.
So now I have to defend Warren Ellis, and it's thank you. Last thing I want to do. Rhys makes me defend Mark Waid. Now the other people want to make me defend Warren Ellis.
I don't. He's the only reason you feel the need to defend Mark Waid is that you are unwilling to acknowledge how stupid Kingdom Come was.
I read it again, and I what struck me so much about it is how your boy Zach said. I mean, other people have said this too. It's not just Zach, but he's the one I remember saying it. And he said 2016 broke people's minds. You know, people who were at least had a semblance of normalcy just went like full on Orange Man bad, and that's all they could. It's like their eyes went red with rage. And then in comic books, they just took it out on the comics. And whatever. We can have another debate about Kingdom Come. There is one thing that is objectively true about that book is the fact that Mark Waid tried to give some depth to most of the characters. Like even characters that he portrayed negatively, he would show them in the next panel having like more than one frame of mind. So he didn't just say, this guy's bad. All his thoughts are going to be, I'm evil, evil, evil. He'd be like, here's a character and he'll say one thing here and then he'll have a misgiving here. In character writing terms, he would make them round.
Yeah,
or roundish.
I would like to, that is true. Even though I think that he does a lot of taking characters and disregarding their histories and disregarding their actual characters so that he can push his own story. And there's a lot of stupid propaganda in it. It is not nearly as stupid as his last Captain America run.
So that's what I'm saying. Like he was clearly, and again, and when I read Kingdom Come, I appreciated it. I was
once again, I think some of that has to do like the time it was written. This was 96, 97. Editors cared a ton. Jeanette Kahn wrote. I mean, like people talk about women in comics and like, oh, we need to have more women in comics. Jeanette Kahn oversaw DC Comics from 82 to like 2004, right? Like. I don't know anything about her personality. I've never read interviews, but I'm telling you the quality of comics that they were producing at that time, they came that dedication to quality came down from the top. And when she left, there was a polar shift, if I can use a slightly hyperbolic term on it, but there was a paradigm that fell away when she retired. She retired and Danny retired. And the next year, Chuck Dixon got kicked out. Well, he just wasn't rehired. It wasn't really a kicking out. He didn't have an ongoing contract or anything, but they just stopped putting him on books.
It just occurred to me that, you know, I can't, when I've seen, you know, when I've seen Mark Waid's writing now, and then when I see before, I was like, dude, you used to be able to write, you know, well-rounded characters. Like something like definitely happened. And it really seems to track back to around 2016, and it's like he's freaking lost his mind.
And I think it was before that. See, because like here's part of the situation, right? And this is me, and maybe, and I don't know if you were into the superhero comics at the time, there, Metalhead, but I'm a little older than our friend Twitless here, and it was actually George W. Bush. It was the year 2000. It was the stolen election. That's when like things, it's not when things started, but that's when things started getting bad.
Sure.
A lot of these threads that were in there beforehand, misreading Kingdom Come, not Kingdom Come, misreading a Watchman, trying to make Dark Knight Rises a high watermark instead of just a good story. A lot of that kind of stuff that was going on at the time. But, you know, the whole Civil War was there so that British people could feel better about making fun of Americans for the Patriot Act, right? It was, and the whole Iraq War thing that was going on, and there was a lot of politics, real world politics that was nakedly put into the books.
Yes,
but it wasn't an overnight thing. But it really started the way. And then the other thing I got to realize is after Bush, right? You had the Obama years. And one of the things that I think was a fallout of that is that I think in comics, if you look back, you're going to see a lot of like the stories kind of went back to normal, but there was all of this crowing from the coastal elites that are like, haha, we elected the Messiah. Haha, you guys are troglodytes. Haha. But they were happy about making fun of all of us people on the right because they were happy that they had elected. So, and things went a little crazy, all of the birther stuff, and they were easily able to make fun of people that thought that, you know, maybe socialism was a bad idea. Like, nobody's socialist. Come on, comrade. Nobody's socialist. So there was I think that was going on, but it had a happy spirit to it, and they believed, and I'm going to use this intentionally and inflammatorily, but I'm serious. The coastal elites believed they had ushered in a 1,000-year Reich. They thought they would never see a red wave again. They had settled it. The science was settled. They were on the right side of history, and those troglodytes in the sticks would know their place because they have been put there by the entertainment industrial complex, and there was no chance of it. And then when Trump went in 2016, their idol was had clay feet. That's what it was. And I think the reason they had already built up this thing from before, right? And so when they found that they were wrong, it's that all of their gloating was turned on their head, and their egos couldn't take it.
So I'm going to agree, disagree. So I'm going to agree with a chunk of what you said, because you can definitely see the trend with the Bush years, because I remember seeing it in the Ultimates, because George Bush is actually a character, and they didn't do what they've done to like Trump, but they definitely didn't portray him in a super positive light. They definitely took some jabs at him. And then you're definitely right with Obama, with like that Spider-Man cover. It was just like, oh gosh, can you be more obvious?
It's embarrassing.
It is. But that's all true. I would say that I don't know if the left thought they had a 1,000-year Reich. I might slightly quibble with that. I think that they would have. I think they assumed that when the next Republican, because it's always inevitable that there's going to be swings back and forth, but I think that they assumed that the next Republican would be either a Jeb Bush or a Romney type. He was going to be some weak. He was going to basically be. The Overton window had shifted so much that even the Republicans were going to be like soft core Democrats in a way. And it was that type of thing. So in a way, it was that kind of huge victory. There wasn't going to be a hard right swing. It was going to be one of these really milquetoast kind of, Republicans who is Rhino, Republican in name only kind of a thing.
Yeah,
and that again. So so that's my only minor quibble with your. Other than that, I think it does boil down to, I think that when Trump was elected, it definitely, like I said, it was like a lightning rod. It definitely so it definitely started earlier, but like that was a huge explosive moment. And like I said, people who used to be who had the capacity, I'm not saying the best writers ever, but Mark Waid had the capacity to write well-rounded characters. He did. I've seen it. And it was like, what happened to you? What happened to people who used to be able to do rounded characters? And all of a sudden, every single issue, it's like reading bad fan fiction now. You pick it up and it's like, what are you doing? What is this? And it really is a puzzler.
And I really think part of that's the editors. You used to not be able to let stuff slide, and then you like Mark Waid, and I've talked about this, the celebrity factor. But even when he was writing, Flash after Kingdom Come, and he had his big thing, it was better. His Captain America run from like 2003 was much better. It was just better. That was the one before Brubaker took over. And brought Bucky back, and it was a better run. There's no questioning that. I think part of that's the editorship. But the other thing is like you also have DC and Marvel being bought by a progressive series of conglomerates. And Marvel is better for Disney if they don't sell well. Because Disney likes to lose money on some stuff so they don't have to pay taxes. And they're big enough. I mean, it's a known thing. It's called being a loss leader.
Loss leader.
Yeah.
And they want Marvel to lose money. So that's why they hired CB Cebulski, who is ridiculously ineffectual in everything. Because they want the lifestyle brand. They want people to think about Marvel. They want people to be ready to shell out for the movie tickets and buy the T-shirts and not pick up the comics. That's why they jumped pencils down, right? I mean, think about the difference in thing. AT&T has said, we're going to trim the fat because we're too big. And if we don't trim the fat, we can't stay big, right? So Dan DiDio was on a tirade last year that the most popular comics they had was their reprints.
Yep.
Because why are people buying their reprints instead of the new books? Because the reprints are good, Jack.
Yeah.
DC's been making reprints for 30 years. Every couple of years they'll sell them, and I'm just like, dude, I picked up the first appearance of Robin, I picked the first appearance of Batgirl, I picked all these books that are never going to be in my price range because I'm some schmuck that works for a nonprofit in Scottsbluff, Nebraska. So
you think that would have been a clue to the industry when he said,
well, and like he
stuff
was like,
is selling, our new stuff isn't. But instead of taking that as a clue, they decided to say it's the fans' fault for not liking what we're writing.
Well, and I think that's why he ended up
instead of us producing crap.
Well, I think that's why he ended up losing his job.
Yeah.
Or taking his leave or whatever. I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that he didn't read the writing on the wall. Yeah. Second Book of Daniel referenced the stream, by the way, in case you're counting.
Brzezinski admitted it too. So they're starting to admit what we've always known. We've always known these characters and these new things have not sold well, and we've always been told that it's the comic book industry is the healthiest it's ever been. You're just you're just conspiracy talking. And then Didio says it. Our reprints are the only thing that's selling. Brzezinski says, "I will never go into." This is paraphrasing him, but you can pull up the quote. He has it in his newsletter. I will never go into debt to purchase new comics. They don't sell, basically. I'm only selling the old stuff. And he's one of the guys who sells the most product in the industry, or I think he's one of the top ones.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact numbers, but he's one of the top ones. And so it's out there, and the common sense is being proven right.
And the thing about this is these trends have been around since I was writing for Fanzine, the online comics fan magazine. I had a couple weeks ago, I had my old editor, Mike Hutchison, on, and Mike did a whole series of things in like 1992 that were if I ran DC, right? And everything he wrote in those articles are the exact opposite of everything DC has done over the last 20 years. And he's like, if we keep these trends up, we're going to see a drop in readership, and we're going to see a lack of engagement, and we're not going to have new readers come into the market, and things he predicted 20 years ago.
Man.
Well, I guess 18 years ago, but still. But yeah, it was the thing that like he was saying, like, DC, I know you guys read my magazine because I'm one of like 6 online web magazines, and I actually I know DC wrote it because like pieces like facts I invented for my fan fictions ended up part of DC continuity later. Shh. I'll never tell. But yeah, that was the thing because but yeah, so I know people were reading our stuff on Fanzine. It gives a combination of fan fiction and scholastic style articles and interviews and all kinds of stuff. Just by a bunch of not all of us were old then. Some of us were early middle-aged nerds. So, but it was a while ago. But yeah, it was one of those things where like those things, those trends that began at that time, they just the mainstream just continued on. And for, like I said, for DC, for Marvel, they don't care. They're happy losing money because they get to go ahead and take the tax write-off. But AT&T is now saying we got to do something different. And one of the things I found most interesting about their new distribution scheme, in addition to going with these known comic distributors, DCBS and Midtown, is the fact that they are increasing their output with Penguin, getting into the traditional book market.
Yep.
And that's one of the things I invited Jeremy Lott on, and he couldn't make it. He thought he was going to be able to for the second hour, and then he had something come up, and he either had something come up or decided he hates me. I'm not sure which. So it's been one of those weeks. Anyway, I couldn't blame him either way it turned out. So but anyway, he's done traditional book publishing, and I really wanted to get his take on the Penguin deal, because that's one of the things I think is most interesting is the move, not just finding a new way to get into shops, not just looking at different retail, but actually circumventing the whole direct market system to a different book distribution system. and how is that going to look? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
It's hard to say. I mean, Diamond's been, like you said, Diamond's been it for so long that what they're going to do, there's going to be hiccups. It's not going to be a smooth transition. Mm-hmm. It's going to take it a while. Will the comic book stores be able to withstand that bumpy road, and get past that? Or are they going to start looking at it and go, well, they're no different. We're having the same issues that we did with Diamond in this whole process. I think it's a little bit too early to tell how it's going to work out. Hopefully for the best. I mean, because if comic books can start just getting out of the specialty stores in more of a variety of areas in volume, not just, a couple of DC books here and there in Walmart and a couple other places, but getting back into, Barnes and Nobles and places like that where people that are going there for something else and maybe walk by with their kid, and their kid's going to see a Superman book and go, hey, because that mom or dad's probably not going to walk into a comic book store. Yeah. They're walking through someplace else and the kid sees the Superman book and they just saw the Superman cartoon. That's going to happen. If we have to get them out of the specialty stores and get them where more people are walking by, if we're going to get new readers into the industry, so it can be sustained for a couple more generations at least.
Twitless.
I have a couple minds on it. And like I said, I can't speak with expertise. I do have some gut doubts that I don't think things can continue as they are. Because I think that when you look at the numbers, the sell-through just isn't holding up. It doesn't seem to be going up. It seems to be going down. And after this pandemic, I think it's not going to be in great shape. So that's the first thing. Is I don't think I don't see it just surging up and all of a sudden all the comic book stores reopen and there's 1,000 new ones. That doesn't seem to confirm to common sense. I think people still have a desire to read comics. Most of the time they get them from like webtoons and Tapas, and they scroll through them on their phones. So that's definitely a huge thing. I don't know what the future. I don't know if floppies have a huge future. But I think that they have a place because I think it's for because that's something I'm experiencing right now when I'm trying to put together my book. Is if I went straight to a trade, it would be so cost intensive. So even though I think trades sell better than floppies, it's kind of hard to jump straight to trades, especially when you're getting started. Mm-hmm. And I also have, I'm of two minds when it comes to the mainstream industry in general, because although I still want to see my Spider-Mans and my Supermans, I also kind of want to burn the whole thing down and let indies take over, partially just because I'm very tired of corporate ownership of all content. When was the last time people are still obsessed over Star Wars? When was the last time we had a new science fiction fantasy franchise? It's just like Star Wars just seems to be monopolizing that particular segment of the market. Everyone's just obsessed with it. And it's not to be mean to Star Wars, but it's not the best thing ever. There's plenty of other science fiction fantasy things that are just as cool, some of them even better. Why is it that our mainstream culture really only has enough of attention span to just like be sucked into just this one? I don't know. So I kind of want to see the whole thing burn down, and then corporations can have their movies and their merchandise, and maybe comics can, be taken over by the indies. I'd kind of like to see that, so we could get a new batch of cool superheroes, and maybe the hobby could restart that way. I don't know. So I've got some weird thoughts about it. I would say I don't think things can continue as they are for very long, because they don't seem. I think the adage is you're either you can't stagnate, and DC admitted that, didn't they, in their FAQ? Yeah. So basically, you're either going up in business or you're going out of business. There isn't this sort of like everything's just stable.
That's one thing I think that they actually pointed out, is that they are like DC itself, and I think DC's made some really smart moves recently in their production line. Like a lot of people bag on DC because they've got the weird, you know, they've done some weird gender politics with their titles. But you know, they're most and I dislike everything virtually everything Bendis brought to the DC universe when he came over. But you know, they are making money, right? They're paying their bills. That was the word, was that they're paying their bills, but they're not, you know, that's not enough. All right. And I think you have, the one thing to say for, the Dio in his position, I'm going to say, because editorially I've disagreed with everything he's pushed, but in terms of the fact if he's paying his bills, then that's something. As a small business owner, I'm not paying my. I mean, we don't have many bills, but we're not making profit. We're everything we're putting in is like, you know, going toward the project, but we're putting in way more non-material goods than we're getting out in cash, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
If I had to pay,
I understand that.
Our art director for the company is my buddy Barry. If I had to pay an art director, I would not be making money. You know, one of our inkers is my son Taliesin, who works for, you know, Attaboys because he's a good kid. You know. Oh, by the way, coming later in 2020, I've Been to Hell, featuring the art of Taliesin Rhys, where he'll get real money. So,
Hey. Awesome.
Actually, I've got I'm really excited. Side note, since I brought it up, all the pencils are in for the project, and Tali will be starting the inks in the next couple weeks, in between his senior year classes. So, very excited for it. I'm super happy with the story. The art's going to look great. He's going to have a lot of time to shine on it. He's doing full pencils. The story he's working on right now, he's touching up inks and doing pencils on a different project, but he's getting a chance to work from straight pencils. So it's all going to be his ink style, and it's going to be pop.
Awesome.
Not to speak against the pencil artist, but their styles are a little different. And like Tolly is going to and he's in the last 6 months, he's grown so much. It's going to bring next level stuff, man. Like it's going to be legit. Like, you don't even know. Anyway, back to the thing. I think that like the thing about like the Dio being able to, like, you know, keep it in the black. That's a good foundation for you know, the next, for Jim Lee to take it in as the sole publisher now, if they can, you know, harness some new markets. And I think that's the real issue. And I think that Allegiance getting into Walmart is a great opportunity. I like I said, I think the price point, I think the way they did it is going to keep the politics that got engaged in on the way there. I think hurt their reputation sufficiently in the community of fans that I think there are a lot of people that are suspicious. But for those people that aren't in that and not on Twitter, don't know them from Adam.
Yeah.
Which is most people, to be honest.
Which is most people.
Yeah.
And those are the people that they having those beautiful displays, those sidekick displays in your Walmart, because they are. It's the quality of the display is top notch. Yeah. But having the uncoated books with the price sticker on them for $5, I don't think they're going to move enough quantity to build their brand name like they want. And I think they'd have been better off taking trying to for the mass distribution that they were working at. I think they'd have a better time taking a page out of Pete Samedi's book for that entry level thing, right?
Yeah. Comics are weird that way, just because of how inflation and how all money has played out. Because $5 in terms of value, it doesn't feel good to purchase like a 24-page floppy. You just don't feel like you get your value out of it. I only really feel like I get my value when I pay like $5 and I get like a full trade paperback from Ollie's. I don't know if you guys have Ollie's, but you can get like a weird clearances on them, and you get like these like full trades, sometimes even hardcover. You get them for $5 or $6 on absurd clearance. That's when I feel like I've gotten a good deal.
Actually, keep talking. I'm gonna disappear for just a second, but keep talking.
Yeah.
customers have to feel like they get a good bargain out of it. And this is where video games and films have really cut into the comic book, I think, just money.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Definitely.
I don't know if you're familiar with online video game platforms, but there's a lot of them that will run sales on a multi-year basis. There's like Steam, they'll run sales all the time. And for $5, you can usually pick up a really decent video game. Video games will give you dozens of hours, if not hundreds of hours of entertainment. And then for $1, you can always go to a Redbox and pick up a film. And that's at least 2 or potentially 3 hours of entertainment.
Yeah.
So if I'm paying $5 and I'm getting 24 pages in a comic, it's positioned in such a really weak spot.
And one of the aspects about that too, where people I think where creators and producers try to justify that expenses from, and what I've seen, especially on social media, is from the investor angle, right? And listen, dude, okay, like a Doug TenNapel book, those beautiful hardcovers with a guy who's got this tradition of I mean, Doug TenNapel books tend to keep their value, especially these specialized ones, and that makes sense from a crowdfunding perspective to a certain aspect for these guys that already have a name built, right? But Mitch Breitweiser, and I'm not trying to be insulting because he has a reputation, he has beautiful artwork. Those Walmart books do not have collector's value, right?
Probably not.
They don't, and they don't now, and I don't think they will in 10 years. Right? They're not like even like your throwaway Pizza Hut, Marvel comics from the 90s. they're Marvel comics from the 90s. So you can get $5 or $10 for out of a mint copy of one of those, even maybe 10, because it's Jim Lee's art. It's Marvel comics. It says Pizza Hut. Most of those got trashed by kids on their way home, right? So there's a demand for it. I don't think that, the Walmart copy of Nora's Saga is, even if it's a great story, is going to maintain that. And here's one I want to bring up to you, like right here. All right, these comics, these are Disney comics that have, these are all reprints of old comics. These are 24-page books with heavy glossy covers. I got at the dollar store at Dollar Tree here in Scottsbluff, Nebraska, for $1, right? This is 24 pages with a glossy cover, a cardstock glossy cover that I paid $1 for. And, Mitch is trying to ask me to pay $5 to get a third of the book I already bought.
Yeah.
So it's not,
okay, I got a personal stake in Red Rooster. Let's put that on the table there. Cards on the table. You're late there, Mitch. But even without that, right? Because I've often said that if Mitch had delivered to the fans first, like nobody would care that he used his profits to launch a company. Nobody cares. I mean, people say they care, but they're lying. If they would have gotten their books when they were supposed to, or even 6 months after they were supposed to, if we had had our Red Rooster book before Walmart had them, none of us would care.
Those optics, those were not good optics.
Those are not good optics.
I was on a stream with Dan Fraga, and that was the same thing. It was basically those are not good optics, no matter how you slice it. Because
yeah. But my point is that even with that, when you can go to the Dollar Tree and spend $1 for 2 hours, I guess I spent 2 hours reading it because I was like cooking dinner at the same time. But so that wasn't a good number. But it was, these also were more dense stories than your average Marvel comic today that takes like 5 minutes to read. It's like this is 20 minutes, stuff. And they're silly kid stories, and they're not, they're entry level, and they're supposed to be. But you don't even, like, DC and Marvel aren't even offering anything like this, and certainly not at that impulse buy where it's like, hey, kid, we're going to the doctor's office. Here's something to keep you out of my hair when I'm scrolling Facebook waiting to have my toe looked at.
Waiting for Rook now. So,
that may have been a real story. No.
The hard thing is that it may not even been Mitch's decision to what to charge, because as I'm looking into publishing my Adventures of Omega Girl book, which I'm hoping to do this summer, finally get it all together. Even when looking at, I think, Kablam, which I think has a very generous print on demand option, I think I think it's still going to come out to at least $3 at
Mhm.
minimum, just
Yeah.
to. I think it's like $287 just to get it printed.
Yeah.
So in order to even just make anything at all, I'm gonna, I think you have to charge like $3.99, $4.
Yeah. Well, and some of that has to do with the volume too, because you're
Yeah.
not ordering a million comics.
That's true. That's true.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's one of the aspects that's like, the print partnership program that the Alterna offers, right? The reason you can get a color book from Alterna, a 24-page or even up to 60 pages color book from Alterna for 70 cents, wholesale, is because they're already printing 10,000 comics. So you
Yeah.
get their bulk discount. That's the whole,
Yeah.
that's the peach, right? And it would make a lot of sense for some of these other, smaller indie companies to offer something similar. That way they get to take a little on the back end and everything else too. But because even the glossier comics their per unit cost is less than you pay Kablam for their printing service, because you're printing, and also Kablam can't handle thousands. I mean, like,
Yeah, they're print on demand.
I mean, they've got good quality stuff, and I've used their products. I really like. In fact, our first print run on our anthology back in 2007 was with Kablam, and their quality is fine.
Yeah.
And it was then, and I'm sure it's better now. But
Yeah.
the stuff that they use, they're still not set up to print the Brightwisers. That's my point. They're not pulling a million comics every 2 months. So.
I agree with you that ideally, and this is the trouble with comics, is that they're still only, in the mind of a consumer, in my opinion, they're still only really worth $1. That's because you can get a Redbox rental for $1. The perfect price point for a floppy, I think, is still around $1. And I think that even in the mainstream business, I think I don't think for whatever reason, I don't know if they can charge that, but that's what it needs to be. It needs to be $1.
Yeah.
And that's what I think people would really pay. And if you put those in the stores, everything's $1. They're dollar comics. We can put them in dollar stores. We can put them in gas stations again. Everything's $1. If you could make that work, I think comics could make
here's part of the deal with that is if you were printing reprints, right?
Mhm.
So your Marvel, your DC, you've got 100 years of comic books. I'm rounding up, yes, but you've got 100 years of comic books, and you want to make sure you're hanging on to your old IP anyway. So you print Golden Age books. You print the modern age. I mean, the stuff. That's actually how Marvel kept alive in the late 60s, because they had their big boom, and then they came up with like 2 titles that sold well. And those were Spider-Man, Avengers, and Fantastic Four.
Mhm.
And everything else they tried was kind of a failure. And part of that had to do with the fact of how distribution worked at the time, because the main distribution company was actually a subsidiary of the company that owned DC Comics. And so they didn't allow them to print as many titles as they thought they could. But the other thing is Marvel ended up recycling a lot of books, Tales to Astonish, Journey into Mystery, those kind of things. And X-Men got reprinted routinely up until the mid-70s. And that kept them in the public eye, and they weren't having to pay for that art again. So they were reaching that second generation of Marvel readers with the same stories.
Mhm.
And they were able to do that without expending, new creator money, which I'm sure made Jack Kirby just happy. Actually, that's about the time he left to go to DC. Anyway, but yeah, I think that's one of those aspects is like you could go the dollar, like just like Disney's doing, right? I mean, some of these are new comics. I think these Toy Story comics actually might be reprinted from the Disney Kids magazine that they had for a while, that they had comics every issue. I think they may be reprinted from that. I know that the Mickey Mouse stuff is reprinted from like the 50s newspaper strips and comics, because it actually has, and some of the European Disney comics, because it actually has the print indicia on the inside cover about where it came from. And so some of them are translations of like Brazilian comics and French comics too, which is fun. And that's what American Mythology, that's a lot of what their stuff is too, is it's reprint of foreign comics for an American audience. Bringing it back home. But anyway, I think that like your big companies that have this working capital could take care of those sorts of ideas and get in that new generation of fans by going with alternate distribution routes. And I think that that's part of what DC is looking at too. And I think personally that the fact that like DCBS and Midtown are actually competitors is going to mean that each of them are going to try to outdo each other in terms of their quality. And I think that shops are going to win out in a couple of years.
Imagine a world where competition actually aids the consumer. Imagine.
Wow.
What a shocking idea.
I know.
I think the thing touching on the price point for the book, you would think, like you said, they have the material. If they want to get if they're really worried about getting new readers in there, they can reprint a lot of stories from the 70s, 80s, 90s even if it's going back to the newsprint type style, and get those in stores where they're the kid, like you said, mom's going someplace and mom's not going to go to the comic book store. The only way to get new readers into it and to get them introduced to comic books is some type of place, alternate place.
Yeah.
So if Marvel's going to start reprinting some of their books and have them at a price point $1, even $1.50, the mom's going to go, you know what? Yeah, sure, I'll get that book for you. She goes into a comic book store and she sees one and she's like, I'm not paying $5 for that.
Yeah. Well, and I mean,
especially at a certain age point, you know.
Right. And even you get to the point too, like I was talking about, you know, when I first was going to comic shops in my early teens, and there was, you know, Lady Death and Vampirella and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, my parents took me because, like, you know, my parents wanted to encourage my reading, and I really wanted to go, and, you know, Rapid City, and we're on a trip and everything. And it was just one of those, put the blinders on. I looked for the bat cowl, and I went, you know, I said, okay, where are your DC books? And, you know, I had my $20 and I was just like, don't look at the cleavage. Don't look at the cleavage. And,
I love your Nebraska references. Rapid City.
Well, Rapid's in South Dakota, actually, but anyway, it's pretty much straight north of us. But yeah, it was one of those things where that was a barrier to entry. And I'm like, even though a lot of comic book shops, because they also sell games and they also sell, you know, your Magic and your video games, whatever else, they're cleaner than they were when I was a child.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that there's not still some of those barriers to entry. And in some shops, and this is really crazy, in some shops, they keep the comics secluded in the back. Like, I don't know if you guys ever had the video stores with the curtain.
Yeah.
They have the adult movies behind the curtain, right? And I was like, why is there a curtain? And my mother's like, don't ask that question. Don't ask that question. And I'm like, okay, but I found out. Yeah. I asked somebody else. Why do you guys have a curtain? Yeah. I think that's actually what happened. And my mother was ashamed and walked out of there that I had asked the clerk. Anyway, point is that like I've been to a lot of shops, like game shops, that they keep their comics in the back and away from public view, like they're a shameful thing, because, you know, the kids come for the pop figures. We don't want to let them see all of the comic books. And I mean, I think that's that itself. The comic shop is not what generates new readers. The comic shop is a great service for people that are already hooked on the drug that are monthly comics. And I think that you got to have some way to entry in. And that's like, and here's a question I have for you guys, right? So Alterna has been talking about wanting to do their own distribution for a while. COVID happened. They pulled out of Diamond, like the week before DC announced that they were considering it and they were coming up with their own scheme. And they're doing all their own distribution.
Yeah.
That's a bold move. And I know, like, those of us who do indie comics, so we all kind of do something similar anyway, whether we've got a website, whether we network with people, whatever it is. But I wonder, because Alterna is offering something that they're the only people that are offering, other than these weird Disney comics that I found, they're the only people I've seen offering accessible entry-level comics. And they've expanded their kids line. Psycho KO is a great book. Mighty Mascots was so much fun. I mean, and they're the Mr. Crypt stories. It's just really accessible, all ages books, right? They're the only people that are offering accessible all ages books at accessible mom, hey mom, can I have this prices? But you can only get them directly from them. You know, I mean, even shops that, I mean, there are some people, the shops that are going directly with them is fine, but it's only, you can only, the shops can only get it from Alterna. It seems like that's cross purposes to their, I mean, am I crazy?
So I thought I heard Alterna talking a year or two ago about them trying to get into grocery stores. I don't know if they achieved that yet, but I know that's in the works, or at least that's
it was. They ended up, that was one of the things that Pete ended up when he announced, this is November, that they were stopping newsstand distribution because they weren't getting any support from the newsstand distributor. They were they didn't move enough numbers, and they didn't have that additional buy-in to get on the checkout stands.
Yeah.
So they weren't basically the amount they were selling on the newsstands was going to pay for returning the return books, the return amount. So they weren't making any money, and some months they were actually losing money just for having those extra sale points. So some people were buying them, but it wasn't enough to generate the profit that they needed.
I'm of the opinion if they could get a little bit of additional support, or at least some investment into the long-term distribution into the supermarkets and get them next to the Archie comics, I think Alterna could do fine.
Yeah.
Because like I picked up, I got some random issues, I think from my public library of all things. And I really liked Scrimshaw.
Scrimshaw is amazing.
Scrimshaw is a fun book. The lettering is really small. I think the lettering needs to be a bit bigger. It's my one little quibble. You need like magnifying glass to see the word balloon sometimes. But the story was really engaging.
How old are you, Twitless?
I didn't see the word balloons on Scrimshaw. They're tiny.
Walmart has readers for $5.
Oh, jeez. No, I'm just saying that. But yeah, I was really impressed by little diamonds in the rough that you could find that were really surprising to me.
Yeah, a lot of their line is excellent stuff. Like I said, their kids' books are just top notch. I'm a little iffy with Gods and Gears, but it's super ambitious. The Scrimshaw is a great story. I really like the 12. Wicked Righteous is really engaging too.
Was that Elysium or something like that?
Not Elysium. That's the movie with
it's
terrible. Actually, what I think I know what you're talking about though.
I got issue 1 and 2, and I can't remember.
Anyway, I can't think.
It was good.
Yeah, and there's, I mean, they've definitely Pete, for whatever he knows. I know like some people don't care for his tastes, but I believe that they've got some real staying power. I think he knows what makes a good comic. But like I feel like, and I think you're right. I think if Alterna could get next to Archie's, they would move. But I don't know that unless like, I mean, because that's a big capital investment. Like Archie has been like the #1 selling title or brand for decades, and nobody acknowledges it because they're in every checkout lane, and they're just constantly they move those.
They're everywhere.
And DC used to have a line that was up there too, and Disney had a lot of comics for a while that were up there, and those comics moved. You know, Marvel makes more money off of Band-Aids with Marvel characters on them than they make on comics. They don't care. It's just you follow the money.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that if Alterna can get like a really nice, rich investor to give him the capital to get into get into a real bunch of grocery stores next to the Archie comics, they'd probably do fine.
Yeah,
because their price point's really good. It's
real good.
Yeah, and I
think it was a bold move by Peter to do what he did, to just say I'm done with Diamond, because he had so many problems with them. He'd go on streams and always say, my books are sitting there and I don't know when they're going to get shipped out. And like, he got tired of it, and that was the thing. But he's smart enough to know I've created a structure. I can do this without them, and I can still serve. I can still serve the people that are ordering my books every month. As far as the individuals, you can go on there and you can order every issue that's going to come out this year, as part of a subscription. But I can also get them to the bookstores that I want to. I don't think he would have done that if he didn't have some semblance that it was going to be successful.
Yeah, well, I think you're right. I think he definitely had some confidence on that, and I do hope the best, because I believe in the product line. I really do. I guess one of my things that is a little bit frustrating to me is like I won't be able to get alternate books anymore, and because my shop won't bring them in, and I don't have the extra money to sink into shipping on something like that as routinely as that, because that's my comic book buying money, right? Yeah. So that's kind of where it is on that, is that I won't be able to get alternate books.
But if he gets them in the grocery store, you could.
Well, yeah, that's true.
He's got to get them back.
And that's 100% true on that. But the other side of it too is like, because my shop won't pay shipping twice in a month. That was part of the deal, is that they're actually having to cut back on orders. And because they were getting them every 2 weeks, but they're just like, nah, we're just going to get shipping comics once a month from there, and they get DCBS. And see, and here's the crazy thing, right? DCBS had started in the last year getting alternate books from Diamond, but DCBS is now one of the distributors that DC Comics is using. And so they're instantly the week after, or week and a half after Peter pulled out from everything, it's like, Diamond, we're only doing it. We're not doing with anyone else, right? Yeah. Which, that's his decision. DC says, we're also going to go with DCBS in Midtown, and everybody can get their DC Comics still. Hooray! If Peter had shopped around or had waited a week, he could have had a nationwide distribution system that was already in place. And I know, like, he wants to do alternative distribution. He wants to offer that to other indie people, and I think that's noble. But there are a lot of companies that are going to open up a second account. A lot of small shops that are already with DCBS, or are going to open a second account so they can get those DC books, that are not going to get a third account to get alternate books.
That's fair.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's just. And I mean, of course, he couldn't have told us the future, right?
Yeah.
There's no way to tell the future. It's just one of those things. I'm only pointing it out to say it's fact.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that, like, and once again, it affects me directly.
Well, maybe he'll change his mind. He's Peter's a pretty, I think, reasonable guy. If he reads the wins and says, "Oh, well
yeah." I mean, I think a lot of it depends on what ends up happening. If you run a small business, you got to roll with the punches. If you want to stay afloat. I think that the number of things that he has out of the box ideas or back in other box ideas that he's tried demonstrate that he's willing to not throw things at the wall and see what sticks necessarily, but to look at things from a multi-strategy perspective. And I got to say all the best. I really do want all the best for it. I think that it's just one of those things that it's just interesting to see how that plays in. Cause once again, in the subject of distribution, Alternative's gotten a different tack on it. Allegiance got a different tack on it. DC's got a different tack on it. And Diamond has been its whole thing. Yeah. And so it's just one of those aspects. It's like, somebody's, I think that somebody is going to figure it out in the middle of all of this. I think somebody's going to be just like going to hit the at least move that ball down the court a little bit in a way that we didn't think was possible. Well, I think some of us indie guys thought it was possible a long time ago, but that I think most, because I mean, like I said, I've been trying to figure out some idea for distribution, because like I live in a tiny Nebraska town, right? We have one shop. The next closest shop is 2.5 hours away. So, if I want to get my comics into the stores, I have to drive them there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to pull out my box. I have to do a sales pitch to the dude and then be just like, okay, and I can come down every quarter and bring you a new book. And have to convince them to hang on to my money until I can get there. And I mean, the whole thing, right? So I think one of the things, like you were talking about Metal a while back ago, earlier in the stream, was the idea about, maybe if we can come up with a network where we send 10 books here, 10 books there, 10 books there, and kind of spread out our own distribution network. And that's actually something that something kind of like that is what, and I should have asked them on. Well, I was going to double up Jeremy Lott, who I was going to have on because he's done book distribution. I wanted his unique perspective on it. Mm-hmm. He also publishes his books through Wicked Publishing. And they have their own distribution network in Southern California that they've built up over the last years.
Cool.
And so that's all of the Mythoverse books, Jack Irons, Jeremy Lott's books, the Sporkman books. Those are going to be going through their distribution network when they're released in that form. There's crowdfund versions and there's Patreon versions and there's Wicked versions from their different books. And so the Wicked versions are going to be are stripped down, shelf ready kind of stuff. And so they're going to have their own little thing set up. And I think that it's reasonable for some of us guys to come up with some sort of cooperative system. Yeah. I mean, like, for example, and we're actually at 2 hours, but I'm going to finish my point. So I'm on the planning committee for a mini comic convention here in Scottsbluff. And every year in October, we have a cooperative relationship with our local mall where they want bodies and we want free space. And so we trade. And they give us free space, and we provide them with a couple hundred nerds to wander around the mall for a day. And so with that, we have a thing where I'd like to have, and I don't know if we can pull this together or not, but I think it would be cool to have some of us guys who are friends and acquaintances and partners over long distances. If you want to have a presence at my con, maybe we can figure something out, Yeah. I mean, I have an Ideal Comics table that we run every year, but maybe we can have like a Friends of Ideal Comics section or something,
The Chromosome 21 Comics corner of your 6-foot table.
There you go. Yeah. Well, it's our con, so sometimes we get 2 tables.
Ooh.
Well,
it's double bonus.
To be perfectly honest, the con is is actually a nonprofit. So, myself and Barry, we're business partners, and we're actually on the board also of the MiniCon Foundation. So there we have to be completely open with everything, so we're not looking like we're taking advantage of it. But sometimes I get 2 tables. Last year I brought the second table, but got prime space. Anyway, but yeah, I think that would be something that I would like to offer at least.
Yeah.
And I think that I also, if anybody happens to want to drive to Nebraska in October, there's a free table. You probably won't make your travel money back, but it's fun.
Yeah, because and this is just great because where I live in northern Texas, I have about a little bit over a dozen stores within about 2 hours driving. So, and we have at least 2 comic style conventions a year, and we have like three or four card conventions where you also can get a table and you can sell your comics. So this is like a prime area for what I'm trying to do. And I had plans for this year with the Northern Texas Comic Con to do something, but that all went south on everybody. So, but when they come back next year, it's just like, I want to be able to go, these are my books, and then here's our other indie creators. I think Preston Preston Poulter in when he was at the last Texas Comic-Con. He was selling his books. He was selling some Alterna stuff and a couple other different couple other different books from indie distributors. And that's, it's just like that's perfect. You're helping create a market for everybody. He's not just worried about, because he knows a healthy indie market is going to benefit him as well, and not just, if he's just worried about selling his own stuff, you're kind of, you're not making a lot of friends, basically.
Well, and I think I've had Paula Ritchie. I always forget her first name. On before, and she has a website called I think it's IndieConXYZ.xyz, and her whole like raison d'etre is to like try to encourage like indie art, because like she's like, corporate art is death. It's like you lose your passion, you lose your dream, you lose your hope, you lose art if it's subsidized. So she's built this platform for indie people to just have, it's like a perpetual online convention is what she wants it to set up, right? And so she's got little like booth spaces where, she doesn't charge anything. People can come up and just have like a little ad to redirect to your online store or your website or your Facebook or whatever you want, for people to find different kinds of indie art, whether it's like line art or comics or music or indie film, and just wants to try to get in on all of that. IndieGen, it's IndieGen XYZ, and I think that's one avenue that would be a really popular, a really important kind of successful kind of thing, where it's like social media, but it's specifically geared at the customer experience, or it's specifically geared at trying to look at what kind of products you have. And she's worked in a keyword search that's really smart. I encourage everyone to take a look at it. Ideal Comics would be on there if our website wasn't a mess. And
is it IndieGen XYZ?
I think it's IndieGen XYZ.
Sasa?
Let me look, because I could find out super fast what it is.
No, that's not it. Okay, hold on. Because when I typed in IndieGen XYZ, it gave me a bunch of stuff about Generation X.
So let's see here. Let me come on, fingers. That's not the right thing at all. Here it is. I will pop this out and share it. Because I can. Because that's what technology allows me to do. Yeah, IndieGen.xyz.
Okay.
And you can go browse booths, and it's got a little search thing here that allows you to look at what genre of thing you're looking at. And there's and you can isolate it by genre. You can isolate it by medium. So comics, tabletop gamings, manga, which are just Japanese comics, people. And go from there. See here. What do they have in the manga section? Hey, Wicked. Oh, cool.
Huh.
Look at that. It's right there. We were just talking about those guys.
Cool.
Yeah. There's Giants, there's Chargers, there's the Mythoverse. Hey, Sporkman. Okay.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, like, I think it's a really cool kind of service, as far as that kind of, a different style of networking. I think Twitter, I think Facebook groups are really good for networking for creatives. And it's a neat way to keep in touch with your fans, but you have to have fans for those to be effective.
Yeah.
That's the key.
Yeah. And that's one of the things where like, that's when I say it. I said, and I was talking to Mindy the other day, and because she was, I can't remember what it was, and I said, I really want to have this. I really want it, because she's like, why aren't you're talking about us? You've pumped us up. Why don't you have a booth yet? And I said, because my website's trash. And she says, you can start a booth and not publish it until you're ready. And I was like, that's a good idea. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe we'll see how that goes. But yeah, we need to get some different stuff on our website. I need to get my store set up so I can actually justify having a website.
Yeah. Ours is still a work in progress. So yeah.
I'm
some work.
I'm not trying to seem ungrateful, but when it comes to like coding, I'm kind of the whole show, because my artist is just no interest in learning that, and my artists don't, and so I'm not any good. And we had some really help with designing the skeleton of our website. We hired a guy who did some really good work on it, and he did what we paid him for. But it's just not done yet, because we only paid for the skeleton, and we need some meat on it, and we are out of money. So,
my wife's the brains behind all that. She's coding, and she's trying to get me to get in on it, and I'm just like, my brain's just too old for that. I just can't handle it.
Yeah. I grew up using a DOS system, so I know just enough to extrapolate the next thing. I know a little bit of Linux. I can figure it out. I used to do back with Fanzing. I learned how to do HTML2 stuff, so we could format for the uploader bot. But PHP is its own thing, and I barely get it. So, and that's all like that. Things are not all things are written in anymore, but it's its own beast.
Yeah.
So if you guys watching and down on the stream, or if you're on the replay and you feel like donating, if you're a PHP genius and you want to donate a little time to a worthy cause, it's probably not me. You should probably touch with Metalhead's wife and help her.
Yes. She would appreciate that.
So, well, guys, this has been a fun conversation. I really appreciate you guys coming on. It was a little different show than I imagined, but that's great. Metal, thank you so much for coming on, and I am super stoked that you guys got funded. And how long is your campaign up for yet?
It's going to be up to July 6th.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's got, I think, 18 more days. It's up, and then by then, everything should be done. Most of the stuff should be done for issue 2, so it's just a matter of getting that all together and getting it to the printers. And the goal is to get it to everybody by the end of August. So excellent. And what are your shipping? I didn't meant to ask you earlier. What are your shipping costs on that? Because it's $10. If it's in the U.S., the shipping's fixed into the price.
Oh, okay, cool.
And in Canada, it varies on what you get. It's from $10 to $20, and then if you're on the other side of the planet, it's from like $20 to $40. Just depends on what you buy.
If you're on the other planet, we're gonna stick it into a bag of into a canister of coffee and smuggle it.
Yeah.
So
we'll put it in a bottle, nice and airtight, and we'll just drop it in the ocean. It'll get to you eventually.
Currents are a thing. Just find out where it's going to be. I'll tell you where it starts from, and you figure it out from there. Mazel tov. So, and Twitless, do you have any idea about when you are going to be having a Mega Girl?
It's a work in progress. I'm putting together. I technically pretty much have enough to make a full 24-page issue, but all the stories would be 4 pages long, and I didn't want my first-time readers to think that's all I had. So I'm waiting until I get a longer story, so there's kind of a mix between shorter pieces and longer pieces. Because I started writing shorter stories for our superhero main character, partly as practice, partly to test out artists, which worked out really well. It also helps build up her backstory really quickly, so you don't have to read every single one of her adventures as full 24-page issues.
Right.
I think some people have made some missteps when they try to start their superhero universes by making every story full length. Back in the day, a lot of superheroes had really quick vignettes, and so I kind of wanted to kind of emulate that. So I'm waiting on a 12-page story to finish, and then I'll be able to bundle together the first issue. So I'll definitely have more to show pretty soon, though. But it's coming along, so I'll definitely have something. I'm really looking forward to it. And I will definitely come on your show and talk forever until you don't want to hear about it anymore, because I love that project. I will talk all day. I will talk all day about Omega Girl. But it's a superhero comic that I'm working on, and it is a labor of love. I'm loving it. And I think the finished product is going to be really good. The artwork is already looking really great. I got a fantastic colorist working on it. It's really shaping up. I've teased a couple pieces on stream here and there.
Oh yeah.
But
I think you have some on ours actually. So if people are interested in going back through the archives, you might find some Twitless teases.
No,
that sounds a little dirty. I didn't mean that. Sorry, buddy. Sorry.
Well, if you give me a second, I can actually pull up a. Hold on, let me see.
Oh, while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and so Ideal Comics is my company, our brand. Been doing comics since 2005. Predominantly on the web. Forces of Good and Evil is our web title. It follows the story of two best friends who in high school take an aptitude test and end up getting sent to superhero and supervillain school. They get split up, get a whole new cast of characters. And wackiness kind of ensues with that as they try to navigate their way through this new world of to them of superheroes and villains. We've been telling that story for a long time. Right now our current story is Panic at the Ren Fair, where our hero students are gathering together at a Renaissance fair to test out and to try out for extra credit as they approach their secondary or post-secondary education in superhero college. And we'll kind of see how that all pans out. And that's what's going on there. If you are interested in supporting us financially, we do have a Patreon, which will be in the description. Or if you want to read some of our little vignette stories, our anthologies, Zing 1 and Zing 2, are available as ebooks. They do not have a web store, so you will have to email me at Ideal Comics, and I will leave that in the description as well. And we can transact over PayPal. You can get yourself some digital goodies. Both Zing 1 and Zing 2 are available as ebooks. This is actually the original printing of Zing. This is one of the last copies of the original printing of Zing 1 that was done by Kablam. Actually, look at that right there. Talking about those guys. They do good work. Most of our books we do go through Greco Comics Wellspring out of Michigan, because they got a really good turnaround time and really gotten along well with their customer service people. So we switched. But nothing against Kablam. They're an excellent service, but they were farther away. So let's take a look here at
I think I might have shared this one before, but
I don't think it was colored. I like it.
Thanks. It is coming along. That's our heroine, Omega Girl, facing off with one of the villains, and and also it's kind of like a Hydra agents. We call them jackal agents. That's why they have little jackal masks. They're kind of the minions. But it's coming along. It's coming along much better than I could have hoped. So
yeah, that's awesome. I'm really excited.
Great.
Yeah. So it's my plan is to have the first issue, like I said, some point this summer. I'd love to target July, and then I should be able to do a second issue pretty quickly after that, actually, because I've got a chunk of stories already to go for that one. So I'm thinking I should be able to hit 2 issues this fall. And they'll be available. I'm trying to put them up on any site that does print on demand. So Drive-Thru Comics and Kablam, I think, are the ones I want to do because Kablam has the Indie Planet platform. So when I get that together, it'll be up there, and then potentially I think I'm going to put it up on the Amazon Kindle store, and then I'll probably put it up on Google Play just as a digital download. So.
Yeah, the one I will say one thing about the well, not the Kindle store, but if you have their Create Space,
that thing,
platform, for physical books, there is actually a little tag in there where they want to they only want to sell unique products in their physical books for their print on demand stuff. So if you have a print on demand version that you want to use, it needs to be a little bit different than the others. So something that's exclusive to the Create Space print on demand Amazon platform. I know that because one of our partners, Rico, has his comics. He had a version that was a specifically wanted Kindle because it could print without staples because they do everything square bound. And so he had a little different tweak for that, or the ones he printed for cons and stuff that were a little cheaper. So, but they also are a little more expensive. So, yeah. But some people like their product. Actually, I've got a couple of the my friend Dan Connor, who will be on the show next week, does some of his books were printed through their Create Space, and they're like thick trades and excellent quality stuff. So,
all right.
Yeah.
You're right there.
Don't die on us there, Matt.
Okay. I had to mute myself while I was trying to hold the cough in. Okay. I'm fine. I'm not dead, and it's time to end the show. So, guys, the links are not in the description for all this stuff, but we will. Twitless also does a webcomic about teenagers in superhero high school. It's almost as good as mine.
Almost.
Actually, I'm full of crap. But
it's your show, man.
Anyway, but yeah, that's the ticket, and we will go ahead and we'll have links to all this stuff in the description. And next week we are doing another discussion on Christianity in comics, which has become a monthly feature because people seem to like that show. So we've got to see who all's coming next week. I can't even remember my list right now. Doug Garrett's going to be there. Captain Cummings is going to be there. I think Fly Fox Pro is planning on being there. Dan Connor is going to be there, and someone else. Can't remember. I'll be real embarrassed when they see this and
like, me. Why am I the thumb?
Why am I the thumb? I'm always the thumb, Rhys.
I'm more of a pinky.
Sorry. I counted that way. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Sayonara.